Wagwan, welcome back. Um, Still with our guy Steve. Yesterday I ended up asking, before we got into chapter 30, um, with all the ideas Steve Jobs got wrong, how did he keep finding the home runs? Didn't quite finish the chapter. So today on day 34, got like 3 or 4 pages left to find out, and we'll just hop right into it. Page 387. That's it. There are certain meetings that are memorable, both because they mark a historic moment and because they illuminate the way a leader operates. Such was the case with the gathering in Apple's fourth floor conference room in April 2001, where Jobs decided on the fundamentals of the iPod. There to hear Fadell present his proposals to Jobs were Rubenstein, Schiller, Ive, Jeff Robin, and marketing director Stan Ng Fadell. Didn't and marketing director Stan Ng. Oh, Stan Ng. Fidel didn't know Jobs, and he was understandably intimidated. When he walked into the conference room, I sat up and thought, "Whoa, there's Steve." I was really on guard because I'd heard how brutal he could be. The meeting started with a presentation of the potential market and what other companies were doing. Jobs, as usual, had no patience. He won't pay attention to a slide deck for more than a minute, Fidel said. When a slide showed other possible players in the market, he waved it away. Don't worry about Sony, he said. We know what we're doing, and they don't. After that, they quit showing slides, and instead Jobs peppered the group with questions. Fidel took away a lesson. Steve prefers to be in the moment, talking things through. He once told me, if you need slides, it shows you don't know what you're talking about. Instead, Jobs liked to be shown physical objects that he could feel, inspect, and fondle. So Fidel brought 3 different models to the conference room. Rubenstein had coached him on how to reveal them sequentially so that his preferred choice would be the piece de resistance. They hid the mock-up of that option under a wooden bowl at the center of the table. Fidel began his show and tell by taking the various parts they were using out of a box and spreading them on the table. There were the 1.8-inch drive, LCD screen, boards, and batteries, all labeled with their cost and weight. As he displayed them, they discussed how the prices or sizes might come down over the next year or so. Some of the pieces could be put together like Lego blocks to show the options. Then Fidel began unveiling his models, which were made of styrofoam with fishing leads inserted to give them the proper weight. The first had a slot for a removable memory card for music. Jobs dismissed it as complicated. The second had dynamic RAM memory, which was cheap, but it would lose all of the songs if the battery ran out. Jobs was not pleased. Next, Fidel put a few of the pieces together to show what a device with a 1.8-inch hard drive would be like. Jobs seemed intrigued. The show climaxed with Fidel lifting the bowl and revealing a fully assembled model of that alternative. I was hoping to be able to play more with the Lego parts, but Steve settled right on the hard drive option, just the way we had modeled it. Fidel recalled. He was rather stunned by the process. I was used to being at Philips, where decisions like this would take meeting after meeting with a lot of PowerPoint presentations and going back for more study. Next, it was Phil Schiller's turn. Can I bring out my idea now? He asked. He left the room and returned with a handful of iPod models, all of which had the same device on the front, the soon-to-be famous track wheel. I had been thinking of how you go through a playlist. He recalled. You can't press a button 100 times. You can't press a button hundreds of times. Wouldn't it be great if you could have a wheel? By turning the wheel with your thumb, you could scroll through songs. The longer you keep turning, the faster the scrolling got. So you could zip through hundreds easily. Jobs shouted, "That's it!" He got Fidel and the engineers working on it. Once the project was launched, Jobs immersed himself in it daily. His main demand was simplify. He would go over each screen of the user interface and apply a rigid test. If he wanted a song or a function, he should be able to get there in 3 clicks, and the clicks should be intuitive. If he couldn't figure out how to navigate to something, or if it took more than 3 clicks, he would be brutal. There will be times where when we rack our brains on a user interface problem and think we'd considered every option. He would go, "Did you think of this?" said Fidel, and then we'd all go, "Holy shit!" He'd redefine the problem or approach, and our little problem would go away. Every night, Giles would be on the phone with ideas. Fidel and the others would call each other up, discuss Jobs' latest suggestion, and conspire on how to nudge him to where they wanted him to go, which worked about half the time. We would have this swirling thing of Steve's latest idea, and we would all try to stay ahead of it," said Fidel. Every day there was something like that, whether it was a switch here or a button color or a pricing strategy issue. With this style, you needed to work with your peers, watch each other's back. One key insight Jobs had was that as many functions as possible should be performed using iTunes on your computer rather than on the iPod, as he later recalled. In order to make the iPod really easy to use, and this took a lot of argument on my part, we needed to limit what the device itself would do. Instead, we put that functionality in iTunes on the computer. For example, we made it so you couldn't make playlists using the device. You made playlists on iTunes and then you synced with the device. That was controversial, but what made the Rio and other devices so brain dead was that they were complicated. They had to do things like make playlists because they weren't integrated with the jukebox software or on your computer. So by owning the iTunes software and the iPod device, that allowed us to make the computer and the device work together, and it allowed us to put the complexity in the right place. The most zen of all simplicities was Jobs' decree, which astonished his colleagues, that the iPod would not have an on-off switch. It became true of most Apple's devices. There was no need for one. Apple's devices would go dormant if they were not being used, and they would wake up when you touched any key. But there was no need for a switch that would go click, you're off, goodbye. Dang. I was wrong. I thought it was 3 to 4 pages. It's not. Suddenly, everything had fallen into place. A drive that would hold 1,000 songs, an interface and scroll wheel that would let you navigate 1,000 songs, a FireWire connection that would sync 1,000 songs in under 10 minutes, and a battery that would last through 1,000 songs. We suddenly were looking at one another and saying, "This is going to be so cool," Giles recalled. We knew how cool it was because we knew how badly we each wanted one personal, one, how badly we each wanted one personally, and the concept became so beautifully simple. 1,000 songs in your pocket. One of the copywriters suggested they call it a pod. Giles was the one who, borrowing from the iMac and the iTunes names, modified that to iPod. The whiteness of the whale. Johnny Ive had been playing with the phone model of the iPod and trying to conceive what the finished product should look like when an idea occurred to him on a morning drive from his San Francisco home to Cupertino. Its face should be pure white, he told his colleague in the car, and it should connect seamlessly to a polished stainless steel back. Most small consumer products have this disposable feel to them, said Ive. There is no cultural gravity to them. The thing I'm proudest of about the iPod is that there is something about it that makes it feel significant, not disposable. The white would be not just white, but pure white. Not only the device, but the headphones and the wires, and even the power block, he recalled, pure white. Others kept arguing that the headphones, of course, should be black, like all headphones. But Steve got it. Steve got it immediately. But Steve got it immediately and embraced white, said Ive. There would be a purity to it. The sinuous flow of the white earbud wires helped make the iPod an icon, as Ive described it. There was something very significant and non-disposable about it. Yet there was also something very quiet and very restrained. It wasn't wagging its tail in your face. It was restrained, but it was also crazy with those flowing headphones. That's why I like white. White isn't just a neutral color. It's so pure and quiet, bold and conspicuous, and yet so inconspicuous as well. Lee Cloud's advertising team, TBWA /Chiat/Day, wanted to celebrate the iconic nature of the iPod and its whiteness rather than create more traditional product introduction ads that showed off the device's features. James Vincent, a lanky young Brit who had played in a band and worked as a DJ, had recently joined the agency, and he was a natural to help focus Apple's advertising on hip millennial generational music lovers rather than rebel baby boomers. With the help of the art director Susan Allen Sangan, they created a series of billboards and posters for the iPod, and they spread the options on Jobs' conference room table for his inspection. At the far right end, they placed the most traditional options, which featured straightforward photos of the iPod on a white background. At the far left end, they placed the most graphic and iconic treatments, which showed just a silhouette of someone dancing while listening to an iPod. iPod is white earphone wires waving with the music. It understood your emotional and intensely personal relationship with the music, Vincent said. He suggested to Duncan Milner, the creative director, that they all stand firmly at the far left end to see if they could get Jobs to gravitate there. When he walked in, he went immediately to the right, looking at the stark product pictures. This looks great, he said. Let's talk about these. Vincent Milner and Cloud did not budge from the other end. Finally, Jobs looked up, glanced at the iconic treatments, and said, "Oh, I guess you like this stuff." He shook his head. It doesn't show the product. It doesn't say what it is. Vincent proposed that they use the iconic images but add the tagline, "1,000 songs in your pocket." That would say it all. Jobs glanced back toward the right end of the table, then finally agreed. Not surprisingly, he was soon claiming that it was his idea to push for more iconic ads. There were some skeptics around who asked, "How is this thing going to actually sell an iPod?" Jobs recalled. That's when it came in handy to be the CEO, so I could push the idea through. Jobs realized that there was yet another advantage to the fact that Apple had an integrated system of computer, software, and device. It meant that sales of the iPod would drive sales of the iMac. That in turn meant that he could take money that Apple was spending on iMac advertising and shifted to spending on iPod ads, getting a double bang for the buck. A triple bang, actually, because the ads would lend luster and youthfulness to the whole Apple brand, he recalled. I had this crazy idea that we could sell just as many Macs by advertising the iPod. In addition, the iPod would position Apple as evoking innovation and youth. So I moved $75 million of advertising money to the iPod, even though the category didn't justify 1/100th of that. That meant that we completely dominated the market for music players. We outspent everybody by a factor of about 100. The television ads showed the iconic silhouettes dancing to songs picked by Jobs, Cloud, and Vincent. Finally, the music became our main fun at our weekly marketing meetings, said Cloud. We'd play some edgy cut. Steve would say, "I hate that," and James would have to talk him into it. The ads helped popularize many new bands, most notably the Black Eyed Peas. The ad with "Hey Mama" is a classic of the silhouettes genre. When a new ad was about to go into production, Jobs would often have second thoughts. Call up Vincent and insist that he cancel it. "It sounds a bit poppy, or it sounds a bit trivial," he would say. "Let's call it off." James would get flustered and try to talk him around. "Hold on, it's going to be great," he would argue. Invariably, Jobs would relent, the ad would be made, and he would love it. Jobs unveiled the iPod in October 2000. In October 23, on October 23, 2001, at one of his signature product launch events. Hint: is not a Mac. The invitation teased. When it came time to reveal the product after he described its technical capabilities, Jobs did not do his usual trick of walking over to a table and pulling off a velvet cloth. Instead, he said, "I happen to have one right here in my pocket." He reached into his jeans and pulled out the gleaming white device. "This amazing little device holds 1,000 songs and it goes right in my pocket." He slipped it back in and ambled off stage to applause. Initially, there was some skepticism among tech geeks, especially about the $399 price. In the blogosphere, the joke was that iPod stood for idiots price our devices. However, consumers soon made it a hit. More than that, the iPod became the essence of everything Apple was destined to be. Poetry connected to engineering, arts and creativity intersecting with technology, design that's bold and simple. It had an ease of use that came from being an integrated end-to-end system, from computer to firewire to device to software to content management. When you took an iPod out of the box, it was so beautiful that it seemed to glow, and it made all other music players look as if they had designed and manufactured in Uzbekistan. Not since the original Mac had a not since the original Mac had a clarity of product vision so propelled a company into the future. If anybody was ever wondering why Apple is on Earth, I will hold up this as a good example. Jobs told Newsweek Steve Levy at the time. Wozniak, who had long been skeptical of integrated systems, began to revise his philosophy. Wow, it makes sense that Apple was the one to come up with it. Wozniak enthused after the iPod came out. After all, Apple's whole history is making both the hardware and the software, with the result that the two work better together. The day that Levy got his press review of the iPod, he happened to be meeting Bill Gates at a dinner, and he showed it to him. Have you seen this yet? Levy asked. Levy noted. Gates went into a zone that recalls those science fiction films where a space alien confronted with a novel object creates some sort of force tunnel between him and the object, allowing him to suck directly into his brain all possible information about it. Gates played with the scroll wheel and pushed every button combination while his eyes stared fixedly at the screen. It looks like a great product, he finally said. Then he paused and looked puzzled. Is it only for Macintosh, he asked. Ha! Bill always trying to branch it out to everybody else, not just that one size fits all, or that one size one plug or whatever. Boom. So that is the end of chapter 30. I think this last little bit, in this last 3 paragraphs, or like this last one, two. So this third paragraph before you finish the chapter, I think that really touches on what kind of answer what question I was asking, like when it comes to like with all the ideas that Steve Jobs has got wrong, how does he keep finding the home runs? And I'll read it to you real quick, this specific section. But it says in the blogosphere, however, consumers soon made it a hit. More than that, the iPod became the essence of everything Apple was destined to be. Poetry connected to engineering, arts and creativity intersecting with technology, design that's bold and simple. It had an ease of use that came from being integrated end-to-end, from being an integrated end-to-end system. So, like that part, that's how he was able to, or from what I've seen, that's how he was able to, constantly, or not even constantly, but be able to keep coming back to hits. Like, he was focusing on computers, yes and no, but like, he was focusing on the people. And it's like, when you focus on the people, it's so many different avenues that, like the customer experience, for example, like he paid attention to the customer experience. Like he's looking at the culture, seeing how music is being distributed and how it's being played and how that next wave is going and coming, and how he can take his company that he has control of and play a part in that transition. Sometimes he did a better job of reading the customer experience, and sometimes he did a better job of creating the customer experience. But I said it to say, I think he was able to do it by, just not being a one size fits all, or not even a one size fits all, because I said that as far as like the end-to-end integration, but like just being able to be broad in his interest. Like, you could be a computer company, you could be a computer geek, and it's like you only look at computers. You get what I'm saying? Like, you look at the Apples of the world, you look at the Dells of the world, you look at the HPs of the world, you look at the Microsofts of the world. It's like, cool. Y'all are only providing, y'all are kind of providing the same, like y'all are mirrors of each other. And it's like y'all aren't selling to each other. Yes, y'all collaborate, but like y'all are selling here. You get what I'm saying? So like, why not get that input and try to mirror? You get what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm rambling or not, but I think the basis of it was, just being able to get different inspiration from different areas and, just taking that swing. This was day 34 of becoming more well read. Appreciate you tapping in. Be back for day 35. Ciao.